In today's show, my guest and I have a discussion about gifted children. What is a gifted child? What does it mean to be gifted? We're also going to discuss some things that parents should know about the specific challenges that gifted children face, and also some of the myths surrounding gifted children. So if you have a bright or gifted child, you're definitely going to want to watch today's show. Welcome to the latest episode of Learning with Success, the show for parents of school-aged children, sponsored by Success Tutoring Online, helping students with academic advancement for over 20 years. And I'm your host, Armando Salcido. Today, our guest is Caroline Solberg, the mother of a gifted child. She's also been a participant with the GATE Advisory Board of the Burbank Unified School District for about 10 years. And for any of you that do not know, GATE stands for Gifted and Talented Education. Welcome, Caroline.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Good, fine, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Sure, no problem. Before we get started here, let me ask you, what exactly does it mean to have a gifted child?
The term refers to students who excel beyond the average population, and it can refer to many areas. You can be athletically gifted, you can be artistically gifted, you can be musically gifted, but academically gifted refers to students who are generally in the top 10% of their peer group. It is determined through public schools using testing to try and indicate an IQ score. And in public schools, they try to identify students who are in the top 10%, they're considered gifted, and those in the top, I think it's 1 or 2%, are considered highly gifted. They can master topics more quickly, and therefore they can move ahead more quickly. This is not true for all subjects. Just because a child has a high score and is identified as gifted does not mean that they're going to succeed in every subject. They might be 2 grade levels ahead in math, but very average in English, or vice versa. In our school district, all 3rd graders are tested.
If a child is then tested and determined to be gifted or highly gifted, there are supposed to be a different way or different approach for teaching these children. So is that done? How often is that done? Does that depend on the school, but the district? How's that normally done?
Depends on the school and the district. So one thing that parents can do is meet with the teacher. The first 3 weeks of school is usually assessment, so you might want to wait till week 4 and ask, how are you going to meet the needs of my child? And the most important question that I think they should ask is, what did you learn from the assessments? Where is my child? And based on where my child is starting this year, what goals do you have for them to accomplish by the end of the first semester? So if the child scored very high in math and compared to the rest of the class, you don't want the child sitting there for 1 semester waiting for the rest of the class to catch up. Mm-hmm. So their goals should be different. And so you want to know, okay, what is my child's goal and how are you going to get them there? And then you meet with them again in January. Gifted students are less likely to make progress in one academic school than any other student. All other students are more likely to make progress in 1 year and more progress than the gifted student. The focus of the school district is to bring kids up to grade level. Once they're at grade level, there's no big incentive to move them on. And
I see.
The state rewards school districts for bringing them up to grade level. So the focus is on small group attention to the students that are behind grade level. And the more progress they make, the more the school district is rewarded. But there's no reward for taking them beyond their grade level. And so for the kids that are beyond their grade level, it's sort of like, check, check, check. You're done. We don't have to worry about you. The state's not going to get upset with us because you're doing fine.
So ideally, what should be done, not that it's being done necessarily, and again, it depends on the school and the district, but ideally, what should be done to help that child to progress?
There are state standards for every level. If they've met the fourth grade state standards, start teaching them the fifth grade state standards.
Would they move them to the fifth grade class? What would they do normally? Or ideally, what would they do?
You pull them out into small groups and you provide them with targeted instruction. So
Mhm.
just that one subject, they can go with a class higher than them and learn that one subject.
You also mentioned that gifted children face specific challenges in addition to those that are faced by regular children, not gifted, or in addition to those that are faced by regular non-gifted children. What do you mean by that? And what would be some examples of that?
They might have extremely high energy, and this is so they may not sleep enough. They might be constantly busy, and it can also often be misdiagnosed as ADHD. Another extreme sensitivity, it might be physical. Like some kids are highly sensitive to the fabric of their clothing or to the tags, more so than regular. Some are highly sensitive to sounds, and they react to them at a very elevated level. Some have extreme imaginations and they spend all their time in this imaginary world. They have very vivid dreams, elaborate dreams. Some of them have very intense emotions. Some of them are deeply compassionate, and I'm talking to the extreme. Some are deeply concerned with social issues. And another one is asynchronous development. The higher the IQ, the more likely they are not developing synchronously. So the majority of the population has a chronological age, and their motor skills are at a certain level, and their academic skills are at a certain level, and their emotional, psychological skills are all at that, at the age of a 7-year-old. But a gifted student might academically be at the age of a 9 or 10-year-old, but emotionally be at the age of a 4 or 5-year-old.
Hmm.
And so it's harder to deal with because it doesn't make sense because that's not how the majority of the population operates. It's also confusing because when you have a child that can speak academically at a really high level, they're often thought to be mature, but they're not mature. They're often lacking in maturity. One of the places a lot of parents have trouble with is reading levels. So they've got a 6-year-old that can read at a fifth grade level, a first grader that's reading at a fifth grade level, or second grader that's reading at a seventh grade level. It's not uncommon for gifted students to be underachievers for a variety of different reasons, but one of them is perfectionism because they will
Hmm.
do the homework and it won't be good enough, so they won't turn it in. And it'll
Interesting.
be there in their backpack and they will not turn it in because it is not up to the level where they think it should be. Some of these kids, one of the traits that not all of them, some of them ask a lot of questions. And so they are very distracting because they're asking lots of questions. And they can be labeled as distracting, they can be labeled as a troublemaker, they can be labeled as ADHD. It's difficult for anyone to sit through a topic that they've already mastered. I
Hmm.
had one friend of mine saying, many people have gotten a ticket and had to go to traffic school. And you have to sit through 8 hours of a topic that you've already mastered. And for some of these kids, that's what that is. One of the challenges is a child's need to fail. And the younger they are, the more likely they are to get through school easily. Often they're not challenged until they get to older grades, and therefore they don't fail. And when you don't fail, you don't learn resilience, you don't learn persistence, and it becomes harder to recover. One thing that I've seen that seems to help is when people put their child in an extracurricular activity that's more challenging for them, maybe learning to speak a foreign language or learning to play a sport. that they're not naturally inclined to do. And the best thing to do is to set a goal. I want you to learn this within whatever topic we choose, so that they know where the finish line is. But they have to work hard to get there, because the problem is when things come easy to you, you're not working hard.
Mhm.
And if they're not challenged, they they get to middle school and they've developed habits and expectations that are not serving them well. They expect school to be easy. They expect to always succeed, and they haven't learned the tools that you need to learn in order to get past that. It's also good on, after school, to supplement it with other activities that they don't come by so easily, that they have to learn how to work hard for.
Well, it's interesting because that is something that I do talk to students and parents about all the time on a regular basis, is that you have to understand that failure is basically one step in the process of actually getting to success eventually. But I try to work out something that will be real to the student. As an example, if they like skateboarding, okay, well, you see somebody do a particular move on their skateboard, something really fancy. Well, if you have never done that and you think, wow, that looks really cool, if you try that the first time, you're probably not going to do that well. It's probably going to be pretty bad. You may not be able to do it at all, and you'll probably fall and whatever. There's to be some level or degree of failure. But if a student really wants to learn how to do that, they will persist and then try it again. And then maybe they look really bad while they're doing it, but they actually accomplish it. Okay, there's a step forward. And then they get to the point where they look okay and they can even show their friends. Not necessarily that great or that graceful, but it can be done. And they continue to do that particular trick, and then they become very good. And I let students know that understanding what is required for something, and this could be applied, can be physically how to do a layup in basketball, how to do anything, but it can also apply academically, the whole area of math, to learn and understand and apply math. It can apply to anything. Somebody learning to play the piano, they first of all learn your basics. So the formula is you learn the basics first and understand them, and then you do them more, practice them, and then you get better. And as you practice more and more, you get better and better. If you practice it correctly and often enough, then you get better and better. And then pretty soon you get to be very good. And if you continue to do that, you get to be one of the best. And I explain to students all the time and to parents that truthfully, you can do anything or be good at anything if you follow that formula. But understand that failure is a part of it. Nobody likes to fail. But if you understand that failure is a part of it, you have to be willing to fall, be willing to look like a complete idiot, be willing to, not look that great, so that you can get through that process to get to the point where you actually can do pretty well. And the same thing would be for pretty much anything else if you understand that process.
And one of the challenges is that if your child is in a lot of situations where they're not failing, and you put that failure, the longer you put that failure off, the harder it is for that child to recover from it.
So, what are some of the things that parents should do or could do to help with these specific challenges?
Again, talk to your teacher. Uh, Learn more about what this is. You can
Mhm.
learn more through books. There are a lot of books out there. Burbank does a really good job with parent education presentations. And if you go to their website and you go to the GATE program, and then it'll take you to another page, and you go to GATE Advisory Council, and then you'll see a bunch of dates. The dates are all the different presentations. The National Association for the Gifted and the California Association for the Gifted both have websites with articles and book recommendations. When students finish their work early, it's not uncommon for the teacher to have them help another student. And that's fine. It's a way for them to learn it better. But with gifted students and some teachers, it's happening all the time. And so the child is only instructing other children and not receiving instruction. And so you want to make sure your child's receiving instruction. My son one time came home from school and, how was your day? Whatever. We did science. Oh, what'd you say? Oh, well, they were studying the solar system, but I already know about that. So my teacher asked me to help him work on a project for the Mars rover. So I worked on that, and then I explained it to the class when they were done learning about the solar system. So that
That was
was
good.
really wonderful differentiating by the teacher.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask of teachers to different, in a classroom today, you have your gifted children, your general population, your English language learners, your special ed students, all in one classroom. That's asking a lot of a teacher.
Oh,
And
it is. It is. And every single student, even the general population, every student is unique. Truthfully, every student is unique, and their approach to learning and how they process information and how they really acquire the knowledge, each child is different. At Success Tutoring Online, what we do is we work with each child individually, one-on-one, and specifically work out the needs for that child, for what that child needs on that topic, right? And it could be a review, it could be going over it repetitiously, it could be a lot of visual examples, it could be sometimes physical things, manipulation. Okay, go grab some blocks and come and do this, and now do so. They get an idea. The advantage, I think, of working with a student on a one-to-one basis is that you can adapt to that specific student. If you have an instructor that knows how to adapt to that student, looks for the needs or the unique ways of learning for that with that student, and then adapts the instruction to that, it's physically impossible for a teacher to get with every student one-on-one to make sure that each student actually really truly understands the material that was covered. They can't do that. It's physically impossible. Even those that really try, you can't.
and some students respond better visually, and some students respond better audibly, and so that plays into it also. And then there are students who qualify for special education who are also gifted. So they could have dyslexia and be gifted. They could have autism and be gifted. They could have ADHD and be gifted. And those are called twice exceptional students. And they need a different approach than a student that only has one of those identifications.
Now,
They
I believe now you're starting to get into the next subject, which I wanted to ask, which was basically, what are some of the myths surrounding gifted children? And I think that is some of the things that what you just mentioned, that you can have some things that don't quite add up or seem to add up for a student. So what are some of these myths, and why would it be important for people to understand that they are myths?
One was gifted students don't need help; they'll do fine on their own. We talked about that earlier. No, they need to be instructed just like any other child.
Right.
Another is all gifted children go to school and get high grades. That is not true. Some do, and some don't, for a variety of reasons. If they haven't been challenged at elementary school and they get into the upper grades and they're in a situation where they are not succeeding the way they used to, some of them give up because They never learned how to deal with failure. They never learned resilience, and they suffer from the imposter syndrome. Uh-oh, someone made a mistake when I was 8 years old. I shouldn't have passed that test. I'm not really good at math. I thought I was, but apparently I'm not. And that's not true. You just simply did not receive the instruction you needed and obtain the skills you needed. It is a myth that gifted kids will succeed in all subjects. A few will, most won't. Gifted children have trouble socially at school fitting in. That is true for some. You know, the stereotype is that they're nerdy. Some are, and some aren't. And just if the child socially is doing fine, it doesn't mean that they also can't do math or read 4 levels above their grade level. Gifted children tend to be more mature than other kids their age. Usually not. They simply can talk academically higher. That doesn't mean they're mature. Some are. And some relate better to adults. They're more comfortable talking about topics adults talk about than they are talking about TikTok. Gifted children are always well behaved and compliant. Nope. So that's just a list of myths that are very common.
Can I
If you
say
have
something here? Can I
Yeah.
say something? We have run into that regularly. Let's say a student goes into 9th grade algebra 1 and falls on his face and can be completely mystified because in elementary school and even middle school, straight A's in math all the time. Now, there could be, like you said, there could be a couple of different reasons. One of the reasons that sometimes we have found when we do an assessment is that at the time when they're introduced to fractions, let's say in the 4th grade, they can follow along with what the teacher's doing, duplicate that pattern, and do that over and over on their homework and then on the test, and yet not really understand what a fraction is or how it applies. But they have learned it at that level to memorize and be able to repeat it back on a test. So then when they get into algebra, where they're supposed to use everything that they learned previously, and that's when they fall in their face because they didn't really fully grasp the concept. They understood it at the time to the level that was being requested, and that was fine, but they still never quite fully understood the concept. One of the things that we run into sometimes is students and parents sometimes think, well, my child is not behind, so I don't need tutoring. But what we sometimes have to work on is getting the message out that what our tutors do, what our instructors do, is work with each student individually on what they need. And if they are doing well but want to advance, that's something that we can do. If they have a particular focus, we can work on that to accelerate them in that specific area or in that particular topic. Whether it is they want to work on anatomy or whatever it might be, we can
and to receive instruction that they're not receiving in school. And it
exactly.
might simply be detailed, and like the school is going through a general topic on anatomy, but they want very deep instruction on it, and that's not part of the curriculum. And so you
Right.
can provide that detailed instruction.
Exactly. It is tailored to the individual, whether they are behind, whether they need a little bit of catch up, whether they want to get ahead, or they want to do specialized study. All of those are available, you know.
And it's a wonderful resource because a lot of these kids it's not that, they could read a book and learn about it, but they want someone that they can discuss the topic with.
Exactly.
And there aren't a lot of opportunities to do that. And so
Right.
this is a wonderful service that's available.
Yeah, exactly. There's some online instruction that is basically all text, all they do things on their own. There's nobody to discuss with, there's nobody to talk to. You want interaction, you want engagement. Even if it's something that you already know, that you want to discuss this. This is my thought. I had this idea. What do you think about that? Now let me ask you another question here. So obviously you're very passionate about the whole concept and the area of gifted children, and you've been involved with the GATE program and the GATE Advisory Council for about 10 years. So, why are you such an advocate, and why are you so passionate about this whole area?
Um, I grew up in California, and I saw the program when I was a student, and I was unimpressed. And then I lived my life, and then I had a child, and then he tested in, and I thought, "Oh, this is great. I wonder what progress they've made in 30 years." And they hadn't really. And so it seemed like a population that wasn't being spoken for. And when my child went to kindergarten, um, I thought, "Oh, there's things I hope he experiences. I hope he goes to the police department, the fire department, and the library, has these field trips." And I met with the teacher and to find out, "Oh, we don't have funding. Okay, I could write a grant. What could I do?" It's, well, I could take my child after school, but if I put in a little more effort, I could work it out so that the whole class could go. And if I put in a little more effort than that, I could work it out so the whole grade level could go. And and it benefits my child because then he can speak about this with other people. If he just goes after school with me, he can't talk about it with his friends. So then I got into studying the gifted stuff, and it's like, well, yes, I could try to meet his needs outside of school, but if I put in a bit more effort, perhaps I could work on improving the program for more students. And that's how I ended up here.
So parents have to get involved, and they need to advocate for their kids for change to occur.
And until they do, nothing will change.
You mentioned one time that kids get asked all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what do you want to study when you get to college? And they don't really know how to answer that. So you worked out a way for your son to help him work out a program or a strategy for how to get to college. So, and I know you started to get into that or given another example. So, can you explain that, and why was that so successful?
So when my son was going from middle school to high school, a lot of people started asking him what he wanted to study when he got to college and what he wanted to be when he grew up. And he felt pressure to have an answer. I want to be this specific thing, and therefore I'm going to study this in college. And he didn't know, and it was frustrating for him. And so I said, hold on, hold on, hold on. You don't have to know these things. Now we're in 8th grade. I say, if you could study anything for 4 years, what would it be? Science. Okay. So botany, chemistry, biology, which one? I don't know. Fine. Why don't you use your 4 years in high school to study a variety of sciences, and then, we'll see what you think. And at the end of each year, he and I would sit down and we'd evaluate, what did you think of this? What did you think of biology? What did you think of chemistry? And he found that he loved physics. And so that's, it was very definite, biology was a definite no, chemistry was a maybe, and then physics was like, yes, this is it. Okay, great. So would you want to study physics for 4 years? Does that sound like fun to you? And it did. For him, that was fun. And so, obviously you take other classes in college. Well, then people started saying, well, why are you majoring in physics? What do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I don't know. I said, that's fine. You do not have to know. And I said, study what you want to study. In his case, it's physics. And along the way, hopefully you will find a job that encompasses the skills that you enjoy doing.
The way you broke it down was actually very good, to have him have a goal. But I always tell students and parents they should have a goal. Now, it most likely will change, which is totally fine. But If you have a goal to do something or become something or learn something or study something or whatever it might be, then while you're taking your classes in high school, you can better align what you're studying to help you see how that applies to what you want to accomplish or where your goal. They may say, okay, I want to be I don't know, a forensic investigator for whatever. Okay, fine. And they may take chemistry, and they may take whatever, and then later on say, well, that's not really what I want to do, and they change it, which is totally fine. That is okay, because it actually does change as you learn more. Your goals will change, but you want to have something to work towards. Whereas some students say, I don't know what I want. And so then without a goal, what happens is they never look at how to apply what they're learning towards anything. And so it becomes all just a very surface learning experience and never delve into anything to really learn it deeply for actual application. And I think that's important for students to have that. What do you say?
Oh, I totally agree. Set a goal. So I'm going to learn to play the piano. Oh, well, that's harder than I thought it was going to be. And you're going to have to work at it and put forth effort. So, but let's give you a goal. Okay. It's going to be to play this piece of music. And once you've achieved that goal, you don't want to continue on, we can discuss it. But I want you to continue until you can play this piece of music, or you can play in a song in the recital. And that does two things. It also helps them to be in front of an audience and get over any stage fright they might have. But it teaches them how to be persistent with something that's not easy for them. It teaches them how to set a goal and achieve it. And it also gives them a finish line, because a lot of times people will put their kids in some activity and there's no finish line, and it becomes this tug of war because the kid feels like they're going to have to do this thing they don't want to do forever. And so it helps them if there's and sometimes when they get to the finish line, they say, turns out maybe I want to be in a recital again next year. Okay, well then, that's your choice. We can do that.
What's really good is that approach is it consults the student's willingness and their own actual decision making. You see, that's what's really good. So, and another point I wanted to make, and you brought that up also, is that again, I go over this with students and parents all the time, is that wherever somebody is, no matter what they're trying to learn, if it's done correctly, if it's being taught correctly, learning is always fun. Always. It could be a math situation. It could be learning the piano. It could be riding a skateboard. It's learning how to do a layup. It's learning a new dance move. It could be learning a new song. It doesn't matter. But learning, actually, if it's done correctly, is fun. It should never be arduous. It should never be forced. It should never be done in a harsh manner. It should be done where it's fun. And if it's done that way, what happens is students learn more and learn better, because they like it. They want to learn. That could be for, math. You're learning algebra. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm sure that everybody can relate to seeing a little kid. Look, mom, look what I can do. I can do this. It's exciting whether, I can now ride my bike, or I can ride my bike with no hands, or, it doesn't matter. When you learn something, you want to show it off. It's fun to learn something, and then you want to show it off. You want to explain, show your friends. That's even true as adults.
Schools are designed to have kids learn what it is, but not, like you said, how to apply it. Kids often say algebra, geometry, like, I'm never going to use this. Adding, subtraction, they know if they go to the store that they're going to use it. And I remember my geometry teacher ran into class one day and said, the photography teacher has put a pool in his backyard and he's building a fence and he needs to know how much wood. And he just came to me to ask me how much wood he could buy. And then that was that lesson that day. That was not the lesson, but it was stopped. And it's like, we are going to help the photography teacher figure it out how much wood he needs. And you're going to see that there's a practical application for a job.
Exactly. That's perfect. That's exactly what needs to be done so that, again, students, it's not about memorization, right? It's about learning to apply it. The whole concept of learning, I think people have not quite got correct. It's not memorization. Yes, memorization is a part of it. Yes, you have to learn, you have to memorize your times tables. You have to memorize, there's information that you do have to memorize. Yes, but that's not the point of learning. The point of learning is acquiring knowledge to help you personally in your own life with your own problems, situations, or challenges to then be able to move forward and surmount those challenges.
And when you're studying things like history, the when or the who is really easy and straightforward, but the why is the most interesting.
Exactly. And that's the point they need to learn is, it's not about just memorizing a whole bunch of dates and events and names of, generals or whatever. That's not the point. I mean, yes, they do need to know that, but what was the timeline? What caused this event to occur? And what were the ramifications? What resulted from that happening? How does that affect us now? What other events came from that? And how did that affect us? And if a student could then learn that and understand how that works, now they have actually learned history and can see its importance, because it is important, but just memorizing a bunch of dates and events
And
does nothing
if
for you.
if that's what they're getting in school, especially if it's because they might be in the earlier grades and they don't have access to all the things you were just mentioning, that's where you want to supplement it with.
Exactly.
And like I said, people usually use the term tutoring as catching up. So maybe an academic coach might be a better label for it. And so you have someone that you can have those kind of discussions with and academic explorations with if they're not available in your classroom.
Now, we've covered quite a bit here, and so we're going to be, wrapping up here fairly soon. But let me ask you this: is there anything else that you would like to say in regard to gifted children, in regard to GATE, or in regard to education in general?
Advocate for your child because they can't advocate for themselves when they're young, and no one else is really doing it. It's really up to you.
I agree with you. So, okay, well, Carolyn, thank you very much for joining me
Pleasure.
today here. It's been great. We covered quite a bit,
Thank you.
and I really do think that a lot of this will be very, very informative and valuable to parents, whether they have gifted children or not, because there's so much applicability, okay, to what we've covered and how they could actually use this to help their kids. And I want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
I want to thank all of our listeners and all of those watching on YouTube for joining us today. I hope that you have found today's show informative and valuable. If you like today's show and you haven't already, please subscribe so that you will not miss additional or future interviews like we had today. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, Learning with Success is sponsored by Success Tutoring Online. Our administrative offices are located in Burbank, California, but we provide tutoring or academic advancement to students throughout the United States.